The Amazon rainforest, a rich ecosystem sprawling across South America, supporting diverse plant life, animal species, and native populations who survive by harvesting the forest's resources. The forest, once a shining example of pristine wilderness, is under attack. Deforestation is running rampant, destroying the forest and the life within it, including the native communities. The Amazon and her people needed a defender, so the forest raised one of her own.
Today we will be taking a look at the life and career of Marina Silva, an avid activist and influential politician fighting against climate change, deforestation, and misogyny in Brazil. Let's start with where it all began, the early life of Marina Silva, starting in 1958 going until 1984 when she met Chico Mendes. Marina Silva was born on February 8, 1958, to her mother and father. They then named her Maria Asmarina da Silva Vaz Jalima. She was born in Breio Velho, Rio Branco, Acre, Brazil. Silva was raised in poverty in an Amazon rainforest community. Silva's family were rubber tappers. Her father and siblings worked to collect latex from rubber plantations, while her mother performed duties as a housewife. She was never taught to read or write, but her grandmother would recite poetry from memory. She in turn learned them by simply listening. When Silva was young, her community was repeatedly struck by disease, claiming 3 of her siblings and eventually claiming her mother when she was only 15 years old. In a TED Talk Silva gave in 2012, she recounted the words of her grandmother. She remembered that the words taught her the power and influence of speech.
8 minutos de fala. Eu sou uma pessoa completamente apaixonada pela palavra. A palavra me fisgou desde criança, quando eu comecei a ouvir os poemas da literatura de cordel, recitados para mim pela minha avó, no punho da minha rede, em meio à floresta amazônica, com uma lamparina acesa, lá no meu estado do Acre.
In terms of her ecological upbringing, Silva was raised in immediate proximity to the Amazon rainforest, relying on the rubber trees her family harvested. Careful management of these resources were vital for ensuring her family's livelihood. Silva also witnessed the destruction of her surrounding ecosystem. The Brazilian government began a highway construction project near her community, deforesting the Amazon, displacing the native population, and bringing disease to her community. In an interview with The Guardian, Silva recalled this time of strife. I don't know if I was conscious that the road was bringing all that, but it made me write on my own flesh the consequences of what it meant to mess around with nature, without giving the slightest attention to the need to look after it. Silva's upbringing taught her subjective knowledge. This knowledge from the subjective perspective of Silva's economic status, family ideals, and birthplace. Some examples of Silva's subjective knowledge are specific forest management techniques, the value she places on language and turn of phrase, and the value she places on preserving ecosystems and communities over extracting the resources.
Silva received no formal education growing up, and was first taught to read and write by the nuns that cared for her in Rio Branco.
Silva's formal education began when she was 15. Following the death of her mother, Silva was being treated for hepatitis by a convent of nuns in Rio Branco. It was here that she was first taught to read and write. She continued on to earn an undergraduate degree in history and a postgraduate education in psychopedagogy and psychoanalytical theory. The education Silva received consisted mostly of received knowledge. This is knowledge that was directly communicated to her, without the need for personal discovery or verification. This varies from subjective knowledge, as it's more likely to consist of facts, procedures, and other objective knowledge. This received knowledge includes historical trends in ecology, a formal perspective on psychoanalysis, and established techniques for land and resource management. These established the tools Silva has used in her career of activism and politics. Throughout her upbringing, Silva has seen women occupy a variety of roles. Her mother and the nuns that cared for her taught her compassion and demonstrated the nurturing character of women. She was also taught the value of language by her grandmother, learning to speak with power and influence. Seeing women occupy these strong and influential roles served as inspiration to Silva, giving her the tools and confidence to speak out against misogyny and mistreatment of the environment.
Silva was introduced to the world of politics when she met and worked with Chico Mendes in 1984, an influential labor union leader and activist in Rio Branco.
Silva worked with Mendes to establish Acre's first labor union in 1984. She demonstrated with Mendes to fight deforestation and fight for labor union rights. Following Mendes's assassination in 1988, Silva continued to push for the formation of protected lands. She continued to become Brazil's youngest female senator and first rubber tapper senator in 1994. The collection of Silva's formative experiences establishes her standpoint. This is the perspective from which she views the world. Her upbringing makes her more aware of the impacts on ecosystems and native populations. Her education gives her a more in-depth perspective on human decision-making, and her experience with the empates makes her empathetic to labor unions. Her standpoint on these topics influence the value she places on them and the actions she takes to protect them.
Shortly following Marina Silva's education, she began her career as a public servant.
Silva's time and position of public service can be traced back to 1986, where she first held a seat in the Chamber of Deputies at 28 years old. 2 years later, in 1988, she was elected as the city councilor, a position that she held for 2 years until she became state deputy in 1990. Silva then went on to serve as the state deputy of Acre up to her arrival in Brasilia as the youngest senator in the history of the Republic, where she served 2 terms from 1994 to 2010. She was then appointed as the Minister of the Environment in 2003, 1 year after starting her second term as a senator for the state of Acre. Silva held this position until 2008, until she eventually resigned due to disagreements with the then presidential administration. Silva has competed in 3 presidential elections, with the first being in 2010, second being 2014, and the third being 2018, though all were unsuccessful. Silva is now the current Minister of the Environment as of 2024 under President Lula. Silva's constructive knowledge is evident throughout her career as a politician and public figure, fighting an uphill battle for environmental protection while having no prior political knowledge before becoming a politician. The political knowledge that she constructed helped foster support for environmental policies through not just Silva and her allies, but also through other politicians that might have originally been indifferent to or even against her policies. Alongside learning methods to foster support, she also learned how to deny bills that would go against or prevent her from enacting certain environmental policies. Silva has fostered additional support from citizens and politicians by expanding past just protecting the Amazons, but protecting the environment of Brazil as a whole. Silva's constructed knowledge has contributed to her success in implementing various policies throughout her time as a political figure.
During Marina Silva's time as a public servant, she received many awards and was acknowledged for her dedication towards the environment.
Marina Silva's success as an environmentalist and female politician can be seen through her achievements, such as being the leader of the empates alongside Chico Mendes, achieving a 30% drop in rainforest destruction from 2006 to 2007, also having a 50% decrease in deforestation from 2022 to 2023 through environmental governance, establishing a 2 million hectare reserve managed by native communities, being the first rubber tapper in the Senate, also being the youngest female senator in Brazil's history, and founding Brazil's sustainability party, the Sustainability Network. During Marina Silva's time as an environmental activist, she received many prestigious awards and honors, such as the Goldman Environmental Prize, where she was one of 6 people to receive it in 1996. She was also featured in a 2007 article titled 50 People Who Can Help Save the Planet, written by The Guardian. She was also given the Champions of Earth, which is the United Nations' main environmental award, in 2008. She then went on to receive the Duke of Edinburgh Medal from Prince Philip of England himself, which is the most important honor granted by the World Wildlife Fund for Nature, or WWF for short, also in 2008. Silva's time as an environmentalist and politician in Brazil demonstrates her feminist influence. This is evident through the high-ranking positions that she has held within the Brazilian government during a time where it was unheard of for women to have any say in major policies, much less a stronger voice than most men. Silva adapted a mindset where rather than just preserving ecosystems, the government and people should also actively try to help nature recover from the decades of destruction brought upon it by the previous generations. She goes past just defending the ecosystem by also advocating for the disadvantaged and underrepresented native populations that rely on the forest and the environment to sustain themselves. The influence that Silva has brought to the environmental policies of Brazil are more likely to foster future women leaders, while also encouraging the Brazilian government to start working on environmental sustainability and native population rights.
Throughout Marina Silva's time as a public servant, she's left a lasting legacy on the environmental policies of Brazil.
Marina Silva has left behind a massive environmental legacy by putting Brazil on the map as one of the top countries of environmental preservation, while also inspiring future female politicians, environmentalists, and activists to continue breaking the long history of solely male representation. Though she ran for president 3 times and ultimately fell short, her continued activism within the government of Brazil proves that a person seeking change does not need to hold the highest positions of power to accomplish their goals. Marina Silva has cemented herself as a prominent environmentalist despite the disadvantaged background she came from, and proved that even a poor rubber tapper can become a pioneer of change.